Good evening and welcome to a special edition of State of the Union. I'm your host, Kevin Kimble, founder and CEO of the Financial Services Innovation Coalition. I'm also the executive director of the Southern Christian Leadership Global Policy Initiative. And tonight, our special guest for this special edition is none other than William Cunningham, president of Creative Investment Research, our resident economist, the guy with all the data. And I was going to push this off, because we always do a show on Monday, but we got a couple of guests lined up for the next few Mondays. I mean, this was too important, I thought, to let pass. The president released his budget last week, and Bill called me and said, "Did you see this expletive?" And I said, "Yeah." And we talked about it, and I said, "Let's do a show." And so, Bill, thanks for coming on. And
thank you.
It's always great talking to you. And now everyone gets to hear what I hear, so everyone knows why I'm so angry all the time. So, for everyone who doesn't know, the president released his 2027 budget last week. Trace, can you show the screenshot of that? And I encourage everyone, if you haven't, it's only 92 pages. So usually the budget's like 1,200 pages. So it's very short. Donald Trump didn't take a lot of words and it's written in simple English, so it's not hard to read. And I suggest everyone go online and here it is. Go on, just type in President's 2027 FY 2027 budget and pull it down for yourself. It's very interesting read. Bill's going to run through the impacts on Black America, and then we're going to have a conversation. So, Bill, when you saw the document, what did you think?
Well, it's consistent with the incompetence of this administration. It's a joke budget, really. If you compare it as you just did to some of the more professional, conventional budgets that have come out in past administrations, 1,200 pages is not surprising given the complexity of the U.S. government and given all the things that the U.S. government has. 1,200 pages is appropriate. 79 pages, 100, not appropriate. I mean, it's, and we see this over and over and over again. These people are this administration has a reputation for incompetence, just doing things in a wholly incompetent way that we haven't seen in 150 years. I mean, so it's really striking. And I think that's the point. We wound up here because of the Chicago school government is bad economic theories that came to dominate policymaking in the 1980s, really starting in the late 1970s, that said that, that was that whole Ronald Reagan thing. I don't hate government. I just want to shrink it to the size where I can drown it in a bathtub. Horrific language, number one. You're talking about drowning a baby in a bathtub, but that's who these people are. That's who these people are. That's the kind of imagery that they have in their head. But also fully inappropriate. As the world has grown more complicated, more complex with all kinds of things, you need a bigger, more effective government. Not a super small one. And as you and I have talked about, there's a reason why these people want to get rid of government. It's so that they can profit maximize in a way that they want to profit maximize, with no one to stop them. No one at all to stop them and look out for the public interest. What's in the interest of the public? Well, you need a government, number one, in order to do that, to identify, calculate the dollar impact of the public interest, rectify any inequities, any problems, and again, government worked fine until Black people started to benefit from some of the government policies. So that's my short take, and we'll go over some of the added slides, but no, this is a wholesale destruction of a government that had been put together over the course of the last 120 years, really. And that was really beginning to address in serious ways, making life better, social maximization, social return maximization, making life better for a broad range of citizens. Now, and as you and I have also talked about, that's not to say that there aren't issues and problems. I mean, we've talked about, this is a little controversial. We've talked about immigration and the impact on the Black community, and how during the 1990s, all these drugs were coming in. Where were they coming from? All of a sudden, they showed up at 14th and K Street,
right.
from having been grown and processed 8,000 miles away.
Right.
So, we've always had the concern about the damage that some of these imported items and people would have on the Black community. But when it was time for people like the leaders of the current administration to partake of those substances, when they were, partaking them, they didn't have a problem,
Right.
So, and we know, again, Ronald Reagan, drugs for arms for hostages, we know what they thought about the Black community. So, this is just and again, you and I talk about this all the time. This is the natural result of 40 or 50 years of
1971 actually goes back. I wrote this down. 1948 was that meeting in Switzerland.
Mount Pelerin Society meeting of right-wing free market economists who were advocating on behalf of their own interests and their community's interests after having been severely damaged by World War II. So that's part
versus the Bretton Woods. So the Bretton Woods was the sort of the liberal free market, not the liberal, but the more of the Keynesian, the government, like that's where you got national health care and all that. That was what, 43?
Yes. Matter of fact, Keynes was leading that meeting, as I recall. He was definitely involved. Yeah, the idea was to look for ways to maximize social return, social benefit for a broad segment of the population. And again, make no mistake about it. Keynes wasn't really that concerned about Black people,
Right.
So, he was fully involved in kind of the Jim Crow attitudes of the time. But in his defense, he was at least concerned about poor white people, if nobody else, And
coming out of the Soviet scare, coming out of the Great Depression, there was a lot of people trying to figure out how to make government work better.
But for a wider range of the population, because they were afraid that the working classes would revolt and take over government in the same way that happened in the Soviet Union. So,
I want to say, for people watching, this conversation may get a little esoteric, so don't feel bad. Don't turn away. Bill's got some more stuff with he and I. This is
just Google it. Just Google it. Google Soviet Union takeover, or Google Mount Pelerin Society
and Bretton Woods. Yeah, those are
Bretton Woods. Yeah, that's right. Just Google it. All the information is out there. So yeah.
But so. You did some analysis. You have a couple of slides. Do your quick analysis on the budget, and then we can delve into what it means for the economy and for Black people. Tracy, you have those two documents there.
All right, let's throw up the first slide. The first slide that I sent.
Yeah, hold on.
There you go. Federal budget estimated impact on Black-owned businesses. So one of the things that this administration has proposed, again, irresponsibly, is a 10% reduction in non-defense discretionary spending. Mm-hmm. The reason why that's immature and inappropriate is because you can't have a 10% reduction across the board. You need to look to see where you're reducing stuff, what the secondary and tertiary impacts are going to be, what the unintended consequences are going to be. And if you want proof that these types of policy proposals are inappropriate and immature, just take a look at what happened with the Iran war. They came in there, we're going to bomb everything, without fully considering what they were doing. This is a hallmark of this administration: wildly incompetent, wildly immature, wildly unprofessional when it comes to looking at the impacts of these policies on not just Black people, but on everybody. Again, Iran war is a good example. So they proposed a 10% reduction in non-defense discretionary spending. And what they've done is they've gone through the budget and specifically removed any programs that might help Black people. So the Minority Business Development Agency, and as you know, Kevin, I have been a long time analyst and observer in this area. I remember back in the 90s, we went over to MBDA to try to do some stuff and couldn't get through. So, yeah and then wound up working
being their economist, right?
Yeah, being appointed there for a year as an expert. So, so again, I get it. If you had asked me this in 1996, I would have been cheering,
Right.
but now it really is the wrong approach to take, especially in an economy that is slowing down. You need all segments of the population working to help increase economic output when you're facing these types of challenges, because you don't know where the next good idea is going to come from.
Right,
It's not, but this, again, these guys have this vision that the only good ideas come from white males, and the only ideas worth deserving of support and funding are those that come from white males. That is clearly wrong. The Community Development Financial Institution, same thing there. Back in the 90s, we went to CDFI to try to get them to fund minorityfinance.com, a website where you could actually look at getting financing for minority firms. We launched that in 1996 and could get nothing out of the CDFI fund. Having said that, one of the things that the administration has proposed is cutting CDFI fund spending. Again, wrong timing when you need to energize all segments of the population in order to generate good ideas, new ideas that will help increase economic output for the country as a whole. And we know that great ideas come out of the Black community all of the time. The traffic light, refrigeration, Motown, cell phone, the USB. So the list goes on and on and on. And this is,
let me on the CDFI thing. I want to put a couple. I'm making notes here. We'll circle back. But one of the things on the CDFI, it seems to me that one of the pressures for them when removing the CDFI was CDFI, because it has so much government control, was not as easy to control as opportunity zones, right? So they're sort of replacing CDFIs with the opportunity zone format.
Right. And that doesn't work either. I mean, the only people who this is the same issue with all of the CDFI fund programming. You still find that the programming does not go to the segments of the population, and I'm talking the Black population, that it should. Opportunity zone. And again, Google it, look up the Opportunity Zone program, look up the New Market Tax Credit program. The problem there was that those so-called credits, those so-called community development credits, wound up in the hands of white firms, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, all these guys. They get all of this money that's supposed to go to underserved communities, entrepreneurs in underserved communities. And
worse than that, after every New Market Tax Credit cycle, they gave back credits. I mean, instead of using it on minority communities, they give them back. That's how bad it was.
So you have a bunch of Black people who could use those credits. And by the way, just for the audience, New Market Tax Credits are just tax credits that you get for investing in underserved communities like Black communities. It is one of the ways to drive gentrification while excluding Black people from benefiting, from investing and benefiting at all. And what Kevin is referring to is the fact that, they might have $100 million in New Market Tax Credit Treasury, CDFI fund, might have $100 million in New Market Tax Credits to give out on an annual basis. The real number is much higher, but bear with me. The people who get them, the white banks who get them, might only utilize 85 million of the 100 million, and then they give back 15 million in credits that Black people would have loved to have used, would love to have been able to get their hands on, So it's this tradition, this history this practice of keeping dollars away from minority populations, specifically, and forget minority, Black populations, because other populations have had more success in getting some of these community development allocations than we have. And I'm talking about Hispanic communities, the Latino group up on Columbia Road, Asian-owned group. They've actually had better success. And this is part of the problem. So these programs are widely associated with Black people, but we don't get anywhere near.
That was going to tie that in, but you jumped the gun on that. But go ahead. Yeah,
we don't get anywhere near the benefit. So all these programs are associated with Black people. The popular perception in the white community is that we're getting all this money. There's some current lawsuits that we can talk about in this way. But when you look at it, we'll get 1%. So in that $100 million example of new market tax credits, Black firms, Black community development groups will get 1 million.
Usually those are on the CDFI fund. Usually those are Black banks who get that, and they get it because they partner with a white bank to do some project that they very rarely get the money for themselves.
Yeah, and that very rarely winds up in the communities in helping the people that the programs were ostensibly designed to help. Instead, it finances, again, gentrification, makes rich white people even richer. So no, again, that is a reason to be in favor of reform, not wholesale destruction. That's the problem. I mean, we can identify all day long how Black people are not getting what they should out of all these programs, but that's no reason to cut them out wholesale at all, total. And again, I get it that this is hard work. It's hard to do. And this is
we had on the show Reverend from the church in Dr. King's church in Atlanta, and they have an economic program, and he and I had this conversation, and I said to him, it's not so much like we're not wedded. The CDFI program clearly didn't work, so reform may or may not be the right answer because the structure is bad. But the idea itself of bringing money into the community is something we should work on, which is one of the things we've been focused on, especially at FISIC, is Donald Trump's giving us a chance. He's eliminating all this stuff. Right? He's MBDA. He's just eliminating. So the question is, if the Democrats have a good year and they're back in power, presumably they're more sensitive. It's incumbent upon us to have new ideas. But it's incumbent, whoever's going to be in, it's incumbent upon us to have new ideas and to be pushing those ideas to solve the problem, because the current structure is not working. I mean, that's obviously true. There's no way it's working. So we don't lose a lot of sleep over MBDA going away since we weren't getting any contracts. But the question is, how do we get to the contracts and what's the structure? So I'm sorry.
Well, as I've said in the past, this time, this administration, these practices call for maximum cooperation and collaboration among Black people. If we can't cooperate and collaborate now, then we never will. With this threat, at our neck. If we can't figure out a way to really radically collaborate, I mean collaboration and cooperation among Black people in a very deep way, a way that we haven't seen before. We've been calling for that for about 10 years, knowing that this day was going to come. And there have been some green shoots. There have been some evidence of increased cooperation. I hate to even mention it here on a public forum because, once we mention it, then we know the forces of destruction will come to try to delete even those little things that we do. Any money.
You can't even have a scholarship program. So maybe we won't bring it out. We won't talk about it out loud.
We won't talk about it. But and again, I'm on the record as having said radical cooperation and collaboration is the way through. I mean, your point about being in a position to deal with whoever comes next is a good point. As you know, I don't think you're not going to have midterm elections. You're not going to have midterm
But then we
elections.
have that's a whole different conversation.
Right,
We end up there, that's a whole different conversation.
Any way, shape, or form. They're just, they're just not going to let you have them. So now, do you want to go through the second slide?
Yeah, Trace, we build the second slide and then we can.
All righty. So economic outlook for Black Americans under the budget proposal. It's really straightforward. If he's cutting MBDA, CDFI fund, any program that helps Black businesses, then you know that Black business revenue is going to go down. Also, Black unemployment is going to go up. It's going to be harder for you to get a loan. And if you do get a loan, then you're going to pay a higher rate of interest for that loan, because any of the community development programs designed to lower interest rates have gone by the wayside. So that is pretty straightforward. Reduce access to, slower business formation. Given all of these things, people aren't going to be rushing out there to create new businesses. Something I will say, we saw a lot of Black business, and especially Black women, forming businesses during the Biden administration. Mm-hmm. We really did. They did whatever you say about Biden, and I love the guy. I freaking love the guy. I thought he was great. And Kamala Harris, I mean, good grief. Think about how better off the country would be had, she not gotten the election stolen away from her. But basically, what it means is that all of the supply channels are starved. The water in those channels is going down, and that means that it's a drought. You're going to face a drought from a money perspective. What we see also is that these negative impacts are concentrated in urban and southern markets. You mentioned Atlanta. Atlanta's going to have a hard time here, if this goes through. Harder time than other places. But, Texas, Houston, Dallas, Mississippi, to the extent that there was any Black business development in Mississippi, they're going to have a harder time. South Carolina, North Carolina, the Black Belt, obviously slower Black business revenue, because some of these customer bases, federal government, will go away. And all of this is going to lead to increased number of Black businesses closing because of contracts going away, revenue declining. So what's the bottom line? Bottom line is economic slowdown for Black-owned businesses, higher unemployment, and lower business formation. What that all gives rise to a widening Black-white wealth gap. And if you're looking for ways to reverse this, restore the cuts to MBDA, CDFI, all of these other programs, SBA programs are going. And again, it's not, as you and I talk about often, it's not like Black people were getting their fair share of these programs to begin with. Hispanic firms, Asian firms were doing much better, punching well above their weight. But all of these programs were regarded as somehow being focused on Black people. That we were supposed to get all. No, we didn't get anywhere near a fair percentage of the contracting dollars, or revenue, or support coming out of these programs. One of the things you've done, Kevin, which I'm proudest of, is your work in New Jersey, identifying that Black firms in New Jersey were getting 0.5% of 1%.
No, 0.14%, not even 1/10 of 1%. Sorry,
1/10 of 1%.
But you got 0.5%.
Yeah, that would be a market improvement if we would get up to a half
exponential.
But the popular perception is, all these minorities, all these Black people are getting all this money unfairly from these government contracting programs. No, it's not us. And, we got to figure out a way to, that's one of the things I'm looking at, figure out a way to make that case, provide that data, show how, the perception is every minority business program specifically provides an advantage for Black people, for Black firms, when the reality is we are not the ones who are getting it. White women, Hispanics, Asians. Those are the groups that are getting the bulk of the benefit from any minority business programs.
Yeah.
And we got to figure out a way. And that's, again, unfair. Not only is it unfair, it's inefficient.
Yeah.
As we've said, we know that there are good ideas that come out of every community.
Yeah.
And we're in an economic situation where the economy is slowing down. We're going to need those good ideas from every segment of the population.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly important, that, we'll talk more about this, but as we go through this, that we imagine what the future should look like. I mean, we've created, I think you've seen most of the components of our economic or our legislative agenda. I mean, we're working really hard with all the experts that we know to write legislation or legislative proposals that can be offered, like in scrapping with the idea that we're scrapping most stuff, because getting rid of the Department of Education doesn't cause me heartburn, right? I mean, that money, how the money gets spent is important, but the structure itself was not working for us. Same with MBDA, when it wasn't giving Black people contracts. So the question is, what structure do we want to see, and how do we manage it so that it's it's purposeful and effective for us? I think that's the most important thing.
Well, it's a great question. I don't have any answers off the top. It's a complicated question too, because all of these programs, MBDA, CDFI fund, all of the other ones, I mean, they were created with the intention, and the intention was good, of getting money to Black people and Black communities specifically. I mean, that was part of what happened is, once they got funded, once that money came in, then, we got pushed to the side, as these other groups came in. And
part of that is, I think part of this is our lack of advocacy and political engagement. I mean, we've not done a good, I would say we don't have a political problem in America. We have a management problem. Like, as voters and as citizens, we don't manage our elected officials and make sure they work for us. So,
I disagree. I disagree.
You and I've taken you to the Hill before. We've gone to lobby, and how few of us there are on the Hill lobby.
No, I know. But the reason I disagree is the same reason why I don't think there's anything that you can define as Black on Black crime. If you look at the implements that are used to kill people, Black people didn't invent the gun, this whole other group. So none of the, if a gun is involved, it is not Black on Black crime. It is white on Black crime. Likewise, from the standpoint of what we're talking about in terms of policy and advocacy, and that's the system is set up in such a way as to make it so difficult for us to do this sort of thing that that's my approach.
I know, but I'm gonna. So this is a good conversation. So it's hard. I mean, you've identified it's hard. I mean, that's why the rich people spend millions of dollars on lobbyists, right? I mean, it's just hard.
And it's a bargain at twice the price for them.
Right.
Look at what
the people who know they need to spend money. So right now I think that 25% of the Congress is minority. So 60 African Americans, roughly 20 something 30. It's 120 when all said and done between Blacks, Asians, and Middle Eastern or Asian. That group of people, like if coalesced, you have half of the votes you need to pass any piece of legislation, right? So, when we go up, if we don't present people with our issues, like new market tax credits, people talk about it, but you haven't been up there. We went up there. I think we went up there on a banking thing. But the idea is to get people. We have to get our members to do, like, for instance, there are plenty of votes that come down to 10 or 12 votes. If we could get 10 or 12 of those members to withhold their vote till they get pieces, then we could actually make change. I mean, that is, but again, that's a management problem. We're not requiring them to take the hard votes for their voters.
Well, again, you have so much more tactical knowledge about these sorts of things that it's hard for the rest of us to kind of keep up in terms of the tactics. I mean, understanding as I told you, I mean, we had worked on some legislation surrounding Black banks, that Representative Rush put forward. And as I told you, I wish I had been better at crafting not only that legislation, but other legislation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if that door is open, you're absolutely right. We should have 100 legislative proposals. It doesn't cost anything, you know. And the other thing is, we know that other people use this all of the time. And even if their legislation doesn't pass the first time, they keep at it and they modify it, refine it. You know, it's kind of how this process works. But we really are not savvy about that. So I agree with you there. But at the same time, you know, this has been my theme throughout this conversation for the last 30 minutes. Is, you know, cutting Black people some slack, understanding that the structure is I mean,
the structure's hard for everybody. I mean, the structure's, I mean, it's particularly hard for us, but the structure's hard for everyone. I don't disagree. But when you get to the place where you've got 25% of the members of Congress, you have to make, when you've got half of the votes needed to pass any piece of legislation, you've got to push your advantage there, because it doesn't get much better than that. I mean,
I hear you. It certainly hasn't over the past 200 years.
Yeah, right.
So you certainly can make the case that, you know, we haven't taken advantage of some of these historic advantages that we've had or that have developed. Again, this is all new. This is all new too. I mean, it's not like we had 20%. What did you say? 25% of the Congress.
25%.
150 years ago. So this is
not even 1990. It wasn't until like 1992, after that redistricting case, that became the standard. Yeah,
you know. So we still gotta, you know,
we gotta fly the plane and build it at the same time. I mean, we don't. Unfortunately, we don't have the choice. So So I wrote my notes. I was writing my notes as you were talking. The first one I wrote was, you know, we were talking about the budget, and it was like, you know, Black people get none of that money, but you already covered that part. But I do think there's a huge, you know, one of the reasons why people don't feel any pressure, like the government, part of the government's been shut down with the TSA, whatever, for none of us even noticed it, right? I mean, it didn't impact the people who worked there, but for most people, I didn't have any contracts. I don't work for the government. I don't use any government. So I mean, the idea that, like, Medicaid, we talk about Medicaid all the time. Well, you know, we're 20% of the Medicaid. We're 20% of Medicaid. We're not 80% of it. We're not 40%. We're 20%. So that means 80% of us have no feel for Medicaid. It doesn't. If Medicaid shut down tomorrow, it won't affect most of us. So that conversation is very hard to make the budget in Congress mean anything to people. Is very hard, right? I mean, as you work with Black businesses, getting them to focus on this is complicated.
Yeah, it's the same issue that we had during one of the electoral periods where, you know, we were trying to make the case that no, the economy is great. If Biden hadn't been elected, look at everything would have fallen apart. You know, everything would have been bad. We know that now, but trying to make that case back then was what's that called? Making a negative, or, you know,
proving a negative. Yeah,
proving a negative. You know, again, Google it, look it up. So you're right from that perspective. You know, I don't know. You and I both know the impacts of the federal government spending, policies, procedures, all that sort of stuff, and people are so distracted by this celebrity culture. You know, that was one of the problems, that they have a hard time analyzing and understanding what's going on. And then, you know, you mentioned the Department of Education. Yes, I understand that we were not getting with any of these programs, CDF5 fund, new market tax credit, U.S. Treasury. You know, we're not anywhere you look.
Yeah, there's an NTIA, that's a National Telecommunication Infrastructure. So they had a program called Digital Equity, which we had participated in at one point. And Trump zeroed it out in this bill, and he said it's a racist program. It needs to be, and he wrote big letters. If you read in big letters, so yeah, I mean, we weren't anything that could possibly be helpful for our communities. Just totally got wiped out.
Yeah, and again, you see by his personnel choices at the Pentagon, kind of what they're doing, what this is really all about. None of that stuff is, none of the excuses utilized by any of these anti-Black policy mavens is legitimate. It's all just white supremacy and white racism. That's all it is, fomented by a person who is suspected of being a child rapist. Why you're taking direction from that kind of person. And this was my take to the Federal Reserve. I told the Federal Reserve, not publicly, but I told them that, I think and this gets back to your question about policies and procedures and legislation, that sort of thing. If you look at the law that created the Federal Reserve, you can make the case that they do not have to follow the policy suggestions of an executive branch person who is a convicted felon. You can make that case. Say, look, because it's not consistent with the public interest, with fully advocating on behalf of the public interest. Yeah. Now, did they review that? No, no. Right. Everybody is terrified to try to push back, but I think that's kind of the way to go. I think we're going to get there.
I tell you, part of the problem with that, I do other questions I want to. Yeah, I'm going to get to that, Tracy. I'm coming up to those data points. But one of the problems with that is once the country has elected someone, a lot of those conversations go out the window, right? I mean, that is the one, like, a person in prison can be elected. Hell, a dead person can be elected. So, it becomes really complicated. Trump presents a real complication.
No, he doesn't. No. He knew how to manipulate the media, especially because he was a television con artist, and had the strength, and I won't even call it strength, the gall to go up against a lot of conventional conventions on the political and the economic side. So
that guy's destroyed 30 political careers in his.
Yeah, no, and remember we talked about that, how Jeb Bush was supposed to get him, and then Hillary was supposed to get him, and then Robert Mueller was supposed to get, and he just blew by them all, Right. But no, I think this is a critical systems failure to not be able to deal with the clearly damaging political actor who is outside of all of the bounds of the Constitution. There should be a way to deal with that sort of thing.
So I'm going to switch subjects, similar subject, but different take on this. Is talk about the economy as a whole. So we're talking about this budget and what's left out of it, like what he's not investing in, what he's doing, and we're obviously the economy's changed. There's a lot of disruption. So it's not just a slowing down; it's changing drastically. And there are a couple of data points. One, Trace, I didn't give you this one, so I'm just going to read it off. But it says 10% of the population is doing 50% of all the consumer spending. So that means the other 90% of us is sharing the other 50%. So that's a huge disparity. And a couple other notes that came up, and you sent this one to me, is that 40,000 people lost their houses last month.
Yeah.
Trace, I didn't know that one. What does that portend? I mean, is that month over month? You think it's an aberration, or are we on a glide
path?
No,
I don't think it's an aberration. I think that is for the month of February 2026.
Yeah.
12th consecutive month of rising foreclosure filings. What that is reflecting is this. One of the gifts of COVID was a revaluation of the value of a home. One of the things COVID showed us was that having a home was a really good thing. It had added services, added values that were not fully incorporated into the price of a home. Yeah. So the value of homes skyrocketed, went up pretty dramatically. Totally. Part of the problem had been, so the financial sector also recognized and calibrated a re-estimation of the value of homes that led financial institutions, unethical financial institutions, that is, to try to obtain more homes, just try to get their hands on more. We know that there are a bunch of hedge funds and other people out there who are stealing people's homes, and again, part of it is this revaluation that I'm talking about. Yeah. So what you've seen is a lot of these actors using the foreclosure mechanisms in order to acquire properties. They don't care how they get them. They just know that the value of this entire segment has gone up pretty dramatically, and we should get our hands on as many of those. Now, because Black people are on the margin in all of these areas of the economy, it means that the foreclosures, the 40,000 foreclosures, we're going to be over participating in that, as opposed to, we just talked about government contracting and how we're under participating in that. But because of our lack of standing, lack of economic standing to be able to weather this type of activity, and lack of legal resources where, you could have a bunch of lawyers, Black lawyers that would push back against these foreclosures and Black people, but you don't have that. You don't have that either. So what that means, and the people that are going to be the most involved in that sector and in that problem are going to be Black women, because Black women have been some of the ones that have gone out there and by hook or by crook been able to buy a home, but they're on the edge. I mean, because they had to push really hard, they're on the edge. So when you see this type of recalibration and increase in demand for that product, the house, we're the first ones, and Black women are the first ones to get negatively impacted by that change.
Well, and keeping with that whole, as we start to look at the economic picture for the country, Black people, this country as a whole, they also said that credit card defaults are like rising, skyrocketing, as are car repossessions.
Same thing, all three together. I mean, think about that. Home foreclosures, credit cards, and cars, all of the key assets for a middle-class family in the United States of America. And again, we're barely hanging on to middle-class status if you're a Black person. Now, again, I know some people are doing really, we're not talking about you.
The numbers don't lie. Eventually, at a certain point, the numbers just don't lie, right?
Yeah. But for the most part, and this is all reflective of increasing economic power being granted to financial institutions. Used to be, and this is again where you come back to Biden and Harris, used to be financial institutions would not, they would take it easy. Well, they would look to be fairer or to have their processes more consistent with an administration that they know would be reviewing their activities. But right now, they know that nobody's going to be looking. They can say that you didn't pay the last 6 months here, and you could have the receipt showing that you actually paid. They don't care. They'll still come in, put your house in foreclosure, and steal it from you. So because they know that there's no sheriff, on the case, there's nobody looking over their shoulders. Yeah. So they can say whatever they want to. They can do whatever they want to, and less likely to be fined or to hear any kind of pushback because of this. Again, this is that whole Mount Pelerin Society, free market worship type of attitude that has led to the election of, the person that we have now, this money worship, and assuming that if you have money, then you must be right. You must know everything's good. You must know. You must be a good person. You must know. When the truth is almost exactly the opposite. But that's a whole. So all of these things stacked up together let you know the kind of problem that we have. And then again, when you consider Black people standing within each of those areas, home ownership, credit card utilization, and car purchase, that we are paying more along each of those aggregates. We're paying more in interest for homes. We're paying more in credit cards. We're paying more for car loans. So the banking industry will say, well, that's because your credit scores are so low. But the credit scores are low because of a biased, bigoted, and racist credit system, for the most part, that doesn't fully consider everything that leads one to be able to repay debt. So that's part. But you're correct in identifying these issues as being signs, indicators of the trouble to come. And again, if they really wanted to push hard, given all of these things, I mean, you really could wipe out black wealth, what little wealth we have.
Well, I mean, what's that study says black wealth's going to be zero by 2053?
I remember seeing that. Yeah, that's if things were to continue along. And that is consistent with some of our research, some of our forecasts that say that by 2040, you're only going to have 2 banks in the country. The number of independent banks is just, and under those types of circumstances, the financial institutions have so much power that they can literally do whatever they want. And removing all black wealth is just one of those outcomes. Hey, we didn't mean to remove all your wealth.
So I'm going to ask 2 follow-up questions to this, then I want to move to tax legislation. But commercial property, also the layoffs. So the layoffs, Tracy. Yeah. So it keeps actually 3 more points. So the layoffs, the number of layoffs are like astounding. If you look at we're especially in the tech sector, which is a middle class. What are you looking at? I know you follow the unemployment numbers every month. What are you seeing out there, and how does it rank? And then I've heard the commercial property marketplace is crashing too, because a lot of people were in forbearance, but the lenders are now taking them out of forbearance and moving to foreclosure or restructuring. And what impact will that have? And then the third one is Congress was looking at a bill to increase the deposit insurance on small business accounts to $20 million from $250,000, which means they're preparing for a collapse, right? It's like they're putting all the places. So I'll throw all 3 of those at you at once.
Well, we talked about how new business formations, and especially in the Black community, are going down. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if they increase, and that's a huge increase from 250,000 in insurance to 20 million in insurance. That leaves a lot of room for all kinds of fraud, all kinds of, you're going to see all kinds of stuff going on. Yeah. But doesn't matter for Black people, because we're not going to be able to form, or we're seeing a decline in the number of businesses, small businesses being formed. The other factor there is that is a reflection of the increasing concentration in the small business banking community, in the industry. There are fewer and fewer institutions, banks, period, and there are fewer and fewer that are active in the small business community. That's number one. Number 2, in terms of the layoffs, well, according to the latest employment report, supposedly the economy created 173,000 jobs.
Is that possible, or is that
no? That's nonsense. They have come in and they are manipulating the macroeconomic statistics at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as well as the Department of Commerce Bureau of Economic Analysis, the people that calculate GDP, because they want to show a happy face. They want to show, look, the economy is growing by 4%. That was something that came out.
Yeah, that was a couple months ago. I remember we talked about that.
Yeah. It turned out the damn thing was 0.7%. The same thing with these employment numbers. They show an increase of 178,000 in payroll. Supposedly, Black women increased their employment by 113,000. It's nonsense. It just doesn't make sense. And what's going to happen is eventually all of this stuff will catch up with them. Yeah. Again, you get indicators like the layoffs, number of layoffs, and then you put that against the reported increase in payrolls, and that something's
off. Yeah,
something's off. You just know it. But again, think about this administration and how many times they just absolutely lie about just flat out lie about stuff. So I'm not making this up.
Like the war dead, or we only had 5 people die. They just blew up half of our ships. Okay.
So that, and this is half of the issue that we're going to face coming down the road. the world depends upon macroeconomic statistics about the U.S. economy. The world depends upon, and it's one of the reasons why U.S. Treasury bonds are purchased across the world. So a couple of things.
Yeah.
That means that you can expect to see a sell-off in U.S. Treasury bonds because foreign buyers can no longer depend upon the macroeconomic statistics to accurately reflect what's going on with the economy in the United States of America. Yeah. Now, remember, that's the same thing we said in the years leading up to the 2008 financial crisis, which is that the financial institutions, bigger and bigger, larger and larger, greedier and greedier, underestimated the value of having the U.S. dollar as global reserve currency. Right. One of the reasons why the U.S. dollar was global reserve currency is because, number one, the world thought that, well, if financial institutions misbehave, the U.S. government will punish them to make sure that the financial system is sound. And number two, well, at least we know their numbers are accurate. Their macroeconomic numbers. So this guy has gotten rid of both of those. So that means you can expect to see a collapse, and you're already seeing it. You're already seeing foreign country, Japan, just sold what? 150 billion in U.S. Treasury securities, something like that. I mean, I'm not making this up. I'm also not wishing for bad things. We should.
Well, the change, like the thing in 2008. I remember 2008 because I was still on the Hill, and I remember meeting with bankers around 2006, 2007, and that's when I first started hearing this hint of the mortgage thing. And I asked a couple of bankers, said, "Are you guys sure?" And they were like, "Oh, that's fine. It's regional. It happens with this all." And I remember telling my boss at the time, I said, "We're in trouble because these guys have no idea how connected all this stuff is." And so I do think talking about it is not talking about it's not going to make it go away. The other thing I heard, HSBC, I think the British, one of the British banks, maybe it's HSBC, is creating a Chinese bond market. So people are moving to, especially with Iranians making the yuan, the currency, the petrol currency, that they're looking at something more stable. The U.S. has become. Again, we haven't balanced a budget in 40 years.
Right? Yeah, something more stable. Stability is the key. Predictability is the key. The Chinese bond market has existed for 250 years. I mean, 300 years. It's been maybe 1,000 years.
They created something new. So maybe they're using the petrodollar as
maybe it's a new bond. You're exactly right. Institutional investors worldwide are looking for other more stable instruments in that they can trust in which to invest. And this is the great tragedy of the current cycle where we are currently. You take a financial system that spent 200 years building up its reputational capacity around the world, and it had worked, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, it was actually, we actually had the best bond market in the world, and then all it took is one person to come in and wreck that whole thing. And again, trying to utilize all of the value that had been stored in the reputation of the U.S. dollar and the U.S. bond market so that they could profit themselves. Say that's what happened with the banks in 2008. They misutilized the dollar's standing as global reserve currency to sell fraudulent financial instruments around the world and cause a global crash. Well, it's the same thing here. Now we have one person who is using the U.S. bond market standing as safest investment environment in the world to line their own pockets and to get their own, money.
This question is in two parts, but it's basically part of the same question. There was a report that came out. Basically, it was interpreted as saying the U.S. government's insolvent because we got $40 trillion in debt versus $4 trillion worth of revenue.
Yeah, not true. No, I mean I get it, and yes, they're right. But it doesn't matter. Let me tell you why it doesn't matter. The assets of the United States of America are $100 trillion. Dollars.
That's our land and all that stuff. Is that
all that sort of stuff? So if we're in debt to 42 trillion,
How do we liquidate? How do we liquidate? If we have to go to austerity, let's say if we can't, if our bonds are at 10% or 7%, I don't know what the number is, where it becomes impossible to borrow. How do you liquidate to pay off the debt?
Well, you don't worry. You default, number one. Other countries, China has, Britain has. I mean, everybody's defaulted. Because of this Western capitalist system is based on a lie. And again, it's not the individual instruments or anything like, or say, oh, Social Security is a lie, or the U.S. is default. No. It's just that these systems break down and they reach a point where default is the only logical answer, the only logical solution. Now, short of default, if you might ask, well, what do you do if you don't want to default?
If you default, how do you work through this? What would a default mean for us as citizens?
Well, it would mean that the bonds are worthless. Mm-hmm. So the people that hold the bonds would have lost all the money that they invested in the bonds. Mm-hmm. That means that our assets, the stuff that number one, we'd have a hard time dealing with those people. They wouldn't want to loan us any more money because they look, I just lost $100 billion on your bonds. I'm not coming in again. That means that interest rates in the U.S. go up. It becomes harder. Prices go up. Everything gets worse. It becomes harder to do business, to live. Certainly can't buy oil from overseas. But again, we don't necessarily need it because we make a lot of oil here. But other things, we don't make chips, Right. So everything else, though, will get more expensive and we'll have a much harder time. In terms of the population, yes, it means that you're living in poverty at a poverty level, no Social Security, no medical care, barely any jobs. That's where that layoff chart comes into play. What jobs you do have are terrible, terrible jobs because you as a laborer have no rights, none whatsoever. You're just lucky to have a job. So no, everything is bad. I was going to say the thing to do, though, is to call the debt. You can retire the debt by calling it, telling your investors, hey, those bonds you have, which are supposed to have 10 more years to go. Well, we're retiring them right now. Here's some or all. Here's all or some of your money back. Yeah. So we might. So if you call them under those circumstances, you might give people half of their money back. Look, we're not giving you $1,000 per bond, but we'll give you $500 per bond, and we're going to retire the debt. Now, a lot of people say, "Oh, you can't do that." Anything is possible.
Where would we get the money? Someone would have to make a different kind of loan, or where we get the money to?
Well, either that, or we'd have to figure out a way to get it from the broke ass population in the U.S. somehow.
Increase taxes, right?
Taxes, user fees for driving down the street, increase gasoline.
Look at the sunshine.
Whatever. Yeah, taxing sunshine. You spent 5 minutes in the sun. You owe us $5. You know how these people are. They're greedy as hell. They'll figure it out. So yeah. That's it. But good questions. But yeah.
So I try not to make this go more than an hour because it's late at night, but I do want to ask you one. I guess it's two questions, but I guess talk about this all to see. It's sort of our belief, right, that we're okay going to austerity early to try to void off this collapse of the bond market. Like, the thing I hate about Trump's budget more than anything, I mean, the cuts I expect of him, but the thing that I hate most about his budget is that at the end of the day, he's still in debt. He's still borrowing money to pay for it. Right? Yeah. And I think if we're going to cut all this stuff and cut us out of the budget, then we shouldn't be borrowing. And what is I know that's going to cause pain, but since we don't get any of the money anyway, it doesn't really matter. And what's your...
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it. We never should have gotten to... Remember, this goes back to Ronald Reagan. Yeah. Deficits don't matter. He was the one who, after complaining about a lack of fiscal discipline on the part of the Democrats, oh, you Democrats, you want to borrow money and give it to these black people. He came in and borrowed just a boatload of money in a completely irresponsible manner to fund basically white supremacy. It's basically what they were doing. So I'm with you in terms of reducing the borrowing that I think that's going to be the ultimate outcome of a lot of these policies anyway, because we're not going to be as attractive a place to put your money as we were certainly in the 60s, 70s, and 50s. I mean, we were a great place, but with these incompetent, racist people wholly incompetent policymakers. We sued the Secretary of the Treasury based in part on that contention, on that data, showing how incompetent they were, and every other policymaker of note in this administration has proven us right. So I mean, we just look across it. It's crazy. It is really very, very bad. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, that's good. I mean, I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, we're over an hour. I'll have to have you come back. I won't bore people with another 2 hour, another hour, or another 40 minutes of macroeconomic details. But I do want to talk about, our tax bill, and affordability, and why we have a tax bill focused on, expenditures versus rates, like how the rate says if income's not keeping up with inflation, then having a lower rate, overall macro rate, doesn't help you as much as that. So I do want to delve deep into that on one of these conversations. But Bill, thanks a lot for doing this. It's always fun. I'm a nerd, so it was like, the audience may have been bored, but I had fun, so that's all that matters.
Well, I certainly hope that this was helpful for people that are out there, So, and thank you.
No, I will say this. Even if people didn't want to hear this, they need to hear. I mean, we've got to get into my earlier point. If we don't, there are people around the country having this conversation. If we don't do this for ourselves, then decisions will get made that we have no.
For us. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree. That's what we've seen.
All right, sir. Appreciate you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Right.